I've never spoken on this, not even to my parents or anybody around me. I'm a 22-year-old male, and this happened when I was about 14 or 15. My friends and I would always hang out at the local mall during our free time. One day, I had arrived earlier than my friends, and I was waiting at a seating area in the food court. There were a couple of couches around each other, and it was a common area for anyone to come and sit. So I didn't really notice when a man came over and sat at a couch across from me. I was sitting on my phone not paying attention until he spoke up and said something along the lines of, "Do you come here often?" I looked up to see a man who was in his late 50s to 60s. I told him that I did with my friends, and then he introduced himself. I still remember his first name as it was the same as my dad's. I didn't get an initial weird feeling. He looked normal enough, and I would have no reason to be weirded out by someone. So I told him my name and we started making small talk. I'm a pretty sociable person, and I'd been since a young age, so I was fine talking with what I assumed was just an older man wanting to chat with someone. He started asking me things that I like to do. I said that I enjoyed going out to the local lake and fishing and swimming, to which he said that he went out to that same lake every weekend, and he enjoyed fishing and swimming as well. I said that I enjoyed making music, and he said that he also liked to make music. I told him that I was an avid piano player, and he was excitedly telling me that he had a piano at his house. There were a few other things that I mentioned, and to everyone he said that he enjoyed doing the same thing as well. It all felt normal and right at first, but as we continued to talk, I kept getting a weirder and weirder feeling. It was almost like with everything he said, he was trying to prove something and win me over. He said that he had a boat at the lake and that we should go out sometime on it. He even said that he lived right across the street from the mall, and that I was welcome to stop by and play the piano anytime. Even going as far as telling me the complex that he lived in, and how to get there from the mall. He even said if I would like to, I could go over that same day and play his piano. With every passing minute, it felt like he was trying harder and harder to get me to hang out with him. Talking with him honestly gave me the weirdest, primitive instinct feeling ever, like I was in the face of evil or bad intentions. After about 10 minutes of talking with him, I lied and said that my friends had arrived and that I was going to go and find them. He somewhat sadly said okay and wished me well. A couple of weeks go by and my friends and I go to the mall once again. We were all walking through the mall when out of the corner of my eye I see that same man, in a hoodie, walking past us in the opposite direction. We locked eyes for a split second and my heart immediately dropped. I didn't look back and I honestly forgot about it not soon after. But for the next 2 or so months I would keep seeing him randomly at the mall. I kept brushing it off as a coincidence, as there are definitely regulars at the mall who come often. So I really didn't think too much of seeing him, as he never spoke to me since that first day. I would just occasionally see him and he would be looking at me. I was naive and had a semi-weird feeling anytime I saw him, but I really just brushed it off. Well, that was until one day. I went to the mall with my friends and we hung out for a few hours before all leaving and going home our separate ways. I get home and I go into my room. Nobody else was home and I was by myself for a couple of hours. My mom got home around 7 or 8 and would come into my room looking somewhat worried, asking if I had noticed a guy outside. I said no and then she showed me her phone. We have 2 cameras, one in front of the house and one in the back. About 20 minutes after I got home, somebody approached our house. We lived off a very busy street and our front wall blocks a majority of the view of the street. So we didn't see a car park or anything, just a man walking up to our house from the street. The camera was located near our front door looking out to the driveway. So as he got closer, I realized it was the same man who I'd always seen at the mall. I immediately felt sick to my stomach. He came and looked through the front glass door, and he walked over to the side of our house near our driveway and left the view of the camera. I remember that there was nothing on the back camera, so he had to have stayed by the side of our house for a bit. My room wasn't located over there, so I have no idea what he could have been doing. But he then came back around and looked through the front door again before walking away. I don't know if I was just too embarrassed or scared to say anything, but I said that I did not notice and didn't know who that was. My mom found it weird that he was looking in our house, but said that it could have been a homeless or a druggie because we live off a busy street with a bus stop right in front of our house, so we just went with that. My dad added more security cameras after this to deter people, and I never admitted to seeing him before. But after he showed up to my house, it was confirmed to me that he was following me around, and I don't know what his intentions were. He never came back to the house. We moved to a different part of the city not long after, and I was too far to go to that mall again. I haven't seen him since, and I wish to never again. For context, I'm 19 now and this happened when I was around 10 years old. I'm an 80% believer in the paranormal when it comes to other people's stories, but I am 100% a believer when it comes to my own. I have a few stories, but this is one that I have no other explanation to. I was probably 6 or 8 in this story, just judging at my bedroom. The layout is important, so please bear with me. As you walk into the hallway, it's the first room on the left. As you walk into your right is a straight wall, no bump outs, no windows. On the back wall, right in front of you is the window. To the left is another wall, but where you're standing at the door, if you look directly left, there's a bump out, where the closet will be at. That bump out is about a meter, maybe less. And then my bed is on the left wall as you enter past the bump out. My bed is positioned in the middle, with just the headboard touching the wall. As a kid and even now, I move a ton in my sleep, so I would be kicking the blankets off and waking up cold and having to reach and put them back on. Well, this night was no different. I had woken up cold and reached to my right to grab my blankets, and I had the urge to look at my door. And as I do, there's a kid peeking around it. A small black shadow that couldn't have been any taller than me at the time. I could make out a head, a shoulder, and a hand on the wall. I just went still, paralyzed with fear. Another thing to note that I do have 2 brothers, one older and one younger. They were with my dad at my grandma's house, so it was only me and my mom at home. When I saw it, I was scared obviously, but I didn't yell out. I didn't scream. I had to physically force myself to lay back down. And when I woke up that morning, I had kind of forgotten all about it. But it's only now that I remember it so vividly. I would see that boy often after that, always from the corner of my eye. Like when you would walk past a room and you would think that you saw something, but you would take a step back and look again and there's nothing. After we left that house in 2018, I didn't have any more of those. Another paranormal experience only happened about a month ago. I live in a small town in Australia, and I always take my 13-year-old Jack Russell mix for a short 20-minute walk down the road at about 7 or 7:30 at night. On this particular night, I had to take him a little bit later, around 8:30, as I had to work late and the sun was just setting to the point where I could see but not too well. That could have also been my poor eyesight, but it was enough to manage without needing a flashlight. Although I did have one on me, I just didn't want to use it. So we had just made our loop around a small community garden, and I was leaving the gate, so I looked to my right and saw a person in all black heading towards me. I was also wearing all black, so we both looked pretty suspicious. But out of panic, I crossed the road and headed left. They did the same not 1 second later. Now I'm a naturally fast walker, but I made myself go faster. All I had to do was cross the road one more time and turn right and go down a few houses, and then I would be back home. So walking faster, but not enough to where it was obvious. I crossed the road and turned right. This person didn't cross the road but turned right and stayed on at the other side of the road. We were about parallel on the street. I knew that if they crossed, I could run and I wasn't too far from home. When I got into my yard, the person stopped across the road at this point. I realized the door was locked and I didn't have a key. The person stayed across the road, so I rang the bell, and I was pounding on the door. My older brother answered and the person had just made it into our yard. My brother told the person to get lost and he walked back the way we came. My brother asked me who it was and I explained all of this to him. From this day, I take my dog for a walk before work now, early in the morning rather than after work and late at night. I do enjoy sunset walks, but for my safety, I've stopped, even after a year. I had just lost my job at McDonald's due to a massive flood, taking out a lot of businesses in my area, and I had a girlfriend that lived 30 minutes away, and I needed gas money, so I took a job offered to me by a family friend at a 24/7 gas station in the next town over from mine. The shift that I was hired for was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I had never worked a night shift in my life, but I thought it would be pretty cool to have a little to no pressure other than to make sure the coffee was ready at 4 a.m. for the morning regulars. I was required to train on the day shift for the first couple of weeks to get accustomed to the operations. Throughout those weeks, I learned many of the ins and outs of what takes place on night shift, and I also learned the ins and outs of the people that hung around the place for hours, and there were quite a few. One woman in particular, Melinda, would come in every morning before and after dropping her kids at school, around lunchtime, sometimes actually buying us lunch, and in the evenings when her husband was home. She came for hours considering she lived a couple of streets over. She was nice and I started to enjoy her visits, and we all got along so well in the store. It was a fun atmosphere for the most part. So it finally comes the time for me to work the night shift, and I had my manager with me for a few nights. I was taking her place on night shift because she couldn't do it anymore. She was nice and I admit that I had a pretty big crush on her, so I don't mind spending the time with her at night at all. And I learned that when she worked the night shift, Melinda spent the entire night there. I had been working the night shift alone for a couple weeks, and some of those night shifts drug into the days when we were short-staffed, but again, I needed the money. Anyway, one night I was doing my chores, scrubbing the hot dog rollers, setting coffee filters up for the rush, and mopping the entire store. While emptying my mop bucket, I heard the chime of the door and looked at my watch and saw that it was 2 a.m., which was odd. There typically wasn't anybody coming into the store until 4 consistently, and I was a little bit upset because I had just mopped the floor. But I went out to see who it was, and just as I headed out, the movement in the mirror that was located overhead to stop shoplifters caught my eye. There was a man at the counter doing something with the money order machine, and upon looking again, he had a knife. He was cutting the wires for what reason I have no clue. While he was cutting, I heard him muttering, "Where's Bonka?" over and over again. I knew that I could walk back and get to the phone in the office, but I didn't want him to hear me, so I pulled my phone out and texted Melinda to call the cops, and tried to text quickly as much of what I could describe. She told me that she would be right down, and I was freaking out with every second that passed by. Before she could get there, the man went outside to the gas pumps and threw all of the trash cans and started to try and cut through the gas lines. I took this opportunity to lock the front door in case he tried to get back in, and thank God I did, because he immediately made a beeline for the door and slammed his fist into it. Just as he did, the cops and Melinda showed up and he was put into the cop car, while I explained everything that had just happened. Turns out Bonka was the name he called my manager, whose name was Bianca. He had become obsessed with her in the weeks prior, dropping in nightly and making her very uncomfortable, which explains why she couldn't take it anymore. They knowingly threw a timid 19-year-old into this mess, and seeing me there instead of her was what turned his obsession into rage. I didn't stay there for much longer after that, and I'm just happy that nothing physical truly happened. A female was 25 at the time. This was 2018 and I lived with my boyfriend in our hometown. It's a small city that's relatively poor and has some drug problems, and there's not that much to do. My boyfriend, now husband, was at his friend's house. It was a Saturday night and he said that he would be home around 9. It was about 2 towns over, a 20-minute drive. At the time, we lived in a duplex, split upstairs and downstairs. It used to be a big house that was converted into a duplex. My cousin actually rented the downstairs apartment and she was kind of loud. I knew when she was and wasn't home. She wasn't home this night. The way that our street is situated, the backs of the houses on my street and the parallel street, they all faced a narrow alley and the driveways were mostly only accessible this way. The downstairs unit had a front porch with a door and a side door. Our upstairs unit had the back door and it was at the top of an outside set of wooden stairs. So anyway, I'm watching TV alone. I hear somebody coming up the stairs and knock on the door. It's about 8:30. It wouldn't be that unusual for my boyfriend to be home early. Maybe they got bored playing video games or he just felt like leaving. I usually would unlock the door for him when he came home instead of him using his keys because it was dark and it could be a hassle. So I got up and opened the door to somebody who was not my boyfriend. It was a thin man wearing 2 big jeans and a hoodie. He had about 4 teeth and was teetering back and forth. I was so shocked considering that I was positive it was my boyfriend coming home. The guy at the door asked me, "Can I use your phone?" Behind him, down the stairs and in the alley, I see a big SUV Ford Explorer type of vehicle just idling, with somebody in the driver's seat. I panic and just say, "Yeah, hold on." I then shut and lock the door. I think I was more shocked that it was a stranger at my door and not my boyfriend than anything else. I hide so that he cannot see me through the front door's window and am frozen. Something was just telling me that this was not okay. After a few minutes, I hear him start walking down the stairs. I go over to the door and see the car drive away down the alley. I call my boyfriend and tell him, and he says that he'll leave, but like I said, it was a 20-minute drive. He was about to leave anyway. After he got home, I calmed down and honestly felt silly. Why not just lend him my phone? Was it really that weird? But then I thought about it more over the next few days. It was 2018. This guy and whoever was driving between the two of them, neither of them had a phone. And it wasn't like they were having car trouble. What would they want a stranger's phone for? They also went down an alley into the backside of a house, up some stairs to ask for a phone. They didn't go to my cousin's front door downstairs. I would have heard somebody on the porch. They didn't go to any other house. I saw them leave the street entirely. Also, why go to a house to ask for a phone when there was no car in the driveway? And of course, our battery-powered security camera, it was dead at the time. I genuinely am not sure what they wanted. If anybody has any idea or thinks that I'm just overthinking it, let me know. But God, I hope I never see that creepy guy again. This happened when I was about 14 or 15. I'm 18 now. And for a little bit of context, I hated anybody touching my hair. And my mom would sometimes touch my hair and talk about how much she loved it because it was curly and thick. I would always be like, "You, Mom, don't do that," and it was like a mutual understanding that I disliked when people would touch my hair, even if they were family. So we're in Dollar Tree buying some snacks and stuff, standing in the checkout line, and I'm behind my mom just zoning out. And I feel somebody behind me toss my hair up and just start touching it, and was like, "I love your hair." Yeah, really creepy. Actually just came behind me and started touching my hair with no warning and complimenting me. Like talking about how it was so thick and pretty. And like, thank you, but Jesus Christ, come on. And my mom kind of brushed it off and was like, yeah, I know you don't like when people touch your hair, but I was mortified. Thankfully, this hasn't happened since then. But don't sneak up on a teenage girl and touch their hair with no warning. It's freaky. And plus, to make it even more weird, I realized that at the time my hair was very damaged because I was bleaching it a lot. It was not pretty or well taken care of. So I don't know why that guy touched my hair anyway.